Shalom Aleichem. What a beautiful day. Shout out to all our soldiers and a prayer to our hostages. Prayer to God for the release of our hostages and the safety of our soldiers and the success of their mission in every way. The world is celebrating Israel, and Israel is in our heart and in our soul. It's who we are. It's who we'll be. I just recently listened to an audiobook from Noah Tishby. Very, very inspired. I think it's worth listening. Most of it we know already, but she puts it in very clear terms. And she gives a very good perspective on many things. Uncomfortable conversations with a Jew. There's somebody else. The author I forgot his name. Very famous black sports celebrity. Something Acho, A-C-H-O. I'm sure you know. Anyway, this is a delayed, very short catch-up on Parshas Kedoshim, which was last week. I learned something and I just didn't have the time to share it, and I'd like to. It's just a very simple, good to know idea about the Parsha. One of the most famous mitzvahs in the Torah is Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow as yourself. The Torah says it clearly. Love your fellow as yourself. Everyone knows that one. And there's a lot of commentary on many different fronts about it. The biblical commentator Rashi, who only comments on a need-to-know basis, he quotes the words "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," and he writes, "Rabbi Akiva Omer, ze klal gadol b'Torah." Rabbi Akiva says this is a fundamental principle in the Torah, the big rule of the Torah. So the Rebbe asks about this, and the Rebbe asks, what's missing from the words V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow as yourself? What is unclear that you need to explain? Because Rashi only explains things that are unclear. And the Rebbe goes on and explains. There's a previous running commentary, number 197, that goes through about 10 different biblical commentators on the same subject. But right now we're just talking about one simple aspect of it. And the Rebbe goes on and says that the question is that the question Rashi is answering and addressing is that if the Torah is prescribing a mitzvah to love your fellow as you love yourself, why then does it go on and throughout the Torah talk about all different kinds of activities and behaviors that we should avoid, that are civil? Like, don't steal from your friend, don't kill him, don't be jealous, don't hurt them in any other way. So that's the question Rashi is addressing. The Rebbe says, if you truly love someone as yourself, why do you need to tell that person, why does the Torah need to tell us that we shouldn't hurt them? If you love someone, you don't hurt them. When you love someone, you don't hurt them, right? Anyway, so, and the question gets a little bit stronger, that if this is, so Rashi answers that it's not a specific mitzvah, but it's a general overarching principle, and the details will follow. You need to love your fellow as yourself. That's the principle. And the details are don't kill, don't steal, and don't hurt others in any other way. And that explains that on a very simple pshat level, which is the simple meaning. And that another question bounces up, if it's a general rule, a principle, then why don't the details follow right then and there? In the Torah, usually, if there's a principle, there's a rule, and generally in life, you say the rule and then you say the details of the rule. But here, you see that they're spread out throughout the whole Torah. Before, during, and after, this general principle is instructed. Says the Rebbe. That's why Rashi included the word klal gadol. It is a general principle. Big. That's the big rule. It's the big rule of the whole Torah, which means to say you're going to find the details of this rule throughout the whole Torah. And all of the Torah, you'll hear ways to fulfill this principle of v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, of loving your fellow as yourself. And that also explains another question. Are you even able to command a feeling, an emotion, to instruct an emotion? The Torah says, v'ahavta, you should love your fellow as yourself. Can one be instructed to love another? Isn't it something that just either is or isn't, or happens during, as a consequence, or because of circumstances? How do you instruct somebody to love? Therefore, the Rebbe explains, Rashi's telling us that it's really not a commandment to love on its own. It's a commandment to do the things. It's a general principle of love that we need to love. But how do we love? We love by following all the details that are laid out in the Torah, all the civil, respectful, interpersonal relationship ways of life and expectations of us from our humans, from our brethren, from our family, etc. So that's the basic idea. I just wanted to share that. It's very simple, but it's also illuminating because everyone says, love your fellow as yourself. Is it really doable, first of all? And what does it mean? So technically, of course, there's a lot more deeper, but technically, it just means do the right thing. Do all the things in the Torah that it says to do socially. And how can you command a love? Is by commanding the actions that demonstrate your love. And I want to just finish with a little thought about this month. The month is the month of Iyyar. Iyyar, in Hebrew it's Aleph, Yud, Yud, Aleph. And actually, there's a dispute on how it's spelled. Is it one Yud or two Yuds? Aleph Yud, Aleph Yud, Aleph Yud Resh, or Aleph Yud Yud Resh, Iyyar, or Iyyar. And the difference, not much of a difference for most people, but the basic idea is that there are two abbreviations that are the energies of the month of Iyyar. Number one is Aleph, stands for Ani, I. The Yud, one Yud or two Yuds, stands for God. That's how you write God in the Torah, in the Siddur. Resh stands for Rofecha. I'm your healer, your doctor. I am God, your healer. I'm God, your doctor. So the month of Iyyar is known to be the month that we focus on healing everything we need, physical, material, spiritual, any kind of healing. That's Iyyar, Ani Hashem Rofecha. It also is the Rosh Tevos, the acronym for our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rachel. 3 fathers and 1 mother. And it also brings their energy into our lives as our forefathers and the founders of our DNA, of our Jewish DNA. Masei Avos Simon Labanim. What they had, we have. Abraham had complete faith in God. We have that too. Sometimes we just need to reveal it better. And so too Yitzchak and Yaakov had their characteristics. And Rachel, our mother Rachel, was the one who was known to sacrifice herself for others. She sacrificed her marriage by giving the signs of marriage to her sister Leah when her father tricked her, or Yaakov, into marrying her sister instead of her. And she also sacrificed her burial spot. I see a hawk. I get distracted by hawks. Her husband Yaakov buried her on the wayside at Bethlehem. It's a famous story. So that she chose to be there for her children later on when they were exiled and they needed a place to pray. And she beseeched God on their behalf. So that is the Iyyar story. And one more thing in here, very quickly, is that if you look in the Torah, there's only one mention of the month of Iyyar in the 5 books of Moses. And that is where Hashem tells Moshe to count the Jewish people. Make a census. And what is the census about? Why count the Jewish people? Says the Rebbe. There's a whole scholarly application to this. But he says when you count something, it truly counts. And it can't be cancelled. The Hebrew words are davar shebeminyan eino batal. Something that is counted, and there's a relevance to it. When you talk about food and mixture of milk and meat and things like that, or kosher or not kosher, if you have a mixture that blends together, then you can extract, you could say, okay, 1/60th of the evil, of the bad, went into the good, whatever the measurements are, or the relative good and bad, or whether it's milk and meat or kosher or not kosher. And 1/60th becomes cancelled. In the rest, it's nullified and it becomes kosher. But when something's counted, when they're actual pieces that you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then even if it's a million, you can't cancel out a piece that's counted. So says the Rebbe, the same thing is with the month of Iyyar is telling us, if you are here, if you are alive, if you exist, you count. God is counting you because you count for God. And that's a little message of Iyyar for today. And that's it for today. It's a catch up. This week's Parsha is Emor. I hope to do a running commentary on that. I just did now one on Kedoshim. Kedoshim is last week's Parsha, but I had to sneak it in. I was busy all week last week. It didn't work out for many reasons. I think that's it for today. God bless you and everyone else.